to maps and meta-analysis. This is Folsom.
Facts.
And faces.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Folsom Facts and Faces. I am Justin Hurst, your co-host, along with McLean and Kelly here. And this week we are interviewing Justin Raithel. So I'll go ahead and give it over to you, Justin. And if you could, please, for our listeners, introduce yourself, what you're running for, and why you are running for that position.
Hi, everyone. My name is Justin Raithel, and I'm running for Folsom City Council District 2. And really the reason why I'm running for City Council, I was an engineer in my first career and spent about 6 years overseas. And I came back with a pretty deep appreciation for democracy and the country, and really felt like to make our system of government work, you have to participate. And that was really what got me and motivated me to start looking into our city government. My other experience that happened when I moved out to California was I started a small business, and I went through some of the bumps of regulations and outdated regulations and bureaucracy of starting up a small business here in California. So those were really the two motivating factors that got me involved early on and started my involvement. That was over 10 years ago, but that was kind of started me on my path to running for city council today.
Right. Oh, well, thank you, Justin. Definitely appreciate that. I had a quick question. Was curious, why a position on the city council, is the right position for what, you want to accomplish, or I guess, put a different way, what could you do in this role that you couldn't do before?
So I think our city right now seems to be more in the defensive mode. I think we're scared of litigation on our homeless issues. We're scared even to let volunteers really participate in our city. So I've been involved with Community Service Day since its inception, and that's one of the exceptions where we actually do encourage volunteers to give back to the city. But I hear oftentimes when people trying to give back, oh, and the bureaucracy is somehow in the way. So I think our city, when I first got involved, I would hear, is it right for the residents? Like that would be the first question, right? Is if it's not right for the residents, then we don't need to talk about anything else. So that should really be the first question we should ask. The first question shouldn't be, what's the liability? The first question shouldn't be, well, how do we operationally do that? And we don't have enough people to do that. And so we don't need to go down any of those roads, really, until we ask the fundamental, like, is this good for Folsom? Is this good for Folsom's residents? And that's really the spirit that I would like to bring back to our city council and to our staff. Because it seems like we're operating really now from a place of fear and a place of concern over litigation. And I know the city has deep pockets and it does get sued. And I'm not saying we be frivolous with tax dollars and jump into lawsuits. But what I am saying is that we haven't been sued by a volunteer. Volunteers generally are people that want to sue the city. They want to help the city. And so maybe we don't need to stress so much about that. We just need to make sure our procedures and policies are set up, and we have the right supervision, and we have the right ability to make sure that those volunteers are moving in the same direction that the city wants to go. So I think that's what I bring really to the city council that may be different is that experience of volunteer culture that we've been trying to instill with Community Service Day, and hopefully spreading that 365 days a year. We have so many great nonprofits in Folsom that people are able to give back with, but they're not able to give back really with the city as much as I would like to see that.
No, that's wonderful. And actually, I will be participating in the Community Service Day this year, which I believe is next week, next Saturday, right?
Yeah, we're
The
just
21st.
7 days away.
Wonderful. Okay. Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
If hypothetically you weren't to be successful in your running for this position and you did not make it to the city council after the November election, it does sound like you're very involved in the city, but where would you then spend your efforts and time in working towards those goals from the outside if you didn't win your race?
So I currently serve as the chair of the County Planning Commission for Sacramento. So I could continue potentially in that role. I was on the Folsom Planning Commission before, and I really did enjoy the land use side of things. The county is an interesting role. I've learned a lot there about the regional issues and things that maybe need to be solved regionally. But I did enjoy my time on the Folsom Planning Commission more, actually. It's closer to home. Your decisions mean more to me and my family and my neighbors. So I think I may get more involved back in a Folsom commission instead of a county commission. Although I love both, and those are great ways to give back. So the other side of things is I'm an entrepreneur. I have a software company, but it's a relatively small operation, and so I do have some capacity for my next business venture. I left the company that I was working for about 4 months ago. I think it's about 4 months ago now. So I think something else is likely going to come along, and I'm gonna probably try to do another cool business for Folsom. So I think that's probably where I would spend my time so serving on some commission, I still have all my volunteer activities through Rotary and Community Service Day that I love. But I think that's where I'd find my way of giving back, kind of like I have been doing for 10 years now.
Do you have a commission in particular that you want to join? It does sound like you cared a lot about the planning commission, but do you want to go back to something that you were a part of, or would you try to join something new?
I I love the planning commission. I think
Mhm.
I provide probably the most value to
Mm.
the city there. Because I have I've got very in-depth knowledge of our general plan,
Mhm.
our specific plans throughout town, the municipal code. And there's initiatives that were started while I was there, like updating our municipal code, that were supposed to be I think the project was supposed to last 18 months. It was started 5 years ago. It's still not done.
Oh, wow.
So I'd love
Mm.
to accelerate that. And I understand COVID staffing challenges. There's many reasons behind it, but outdated code is bad for our small businesses, right? Our small business owners, we don't know to ask for exceptions. We look at the law that's on the books and we follow the law. That's what we try to do, right? And so that's not what larger national operators do, your franchise operators, or your developers, like they know uh, because they do this all the time. It's not a like they're being devious or anything. They just know to ask for exceptions, and they know which rules they can likely get around or get exceptions to. So I'd much rather see, and I push for this on my time on planning and historic commission is if we're granting exceptions to laws, it's time to update our code. Like we need to be treating all of our businesses equally, just like we need to be treating all of our residents equally. And so that's a particular passion of mine that I think I could go back to and dive into on the planning commission.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Oh yeah, that's really wonderful. On kind of the inverse of what Justin had asked, was curious what tangible changes can Folsom, residents expect if you do win your race?
Like like I was talking about on my experience with planning commission, I think that's something that I can bring to the table from day one. The two other candidates running in District 2, great people, but neither of them have served on any commissions that are here in Folsom. And I think that does teach you a lot about how the process works, about how to work with staff, about how to try to get to, a majority of votes. If you're just one vote, you can't really get anything done. You have to work through the details of the policy, and you have to convince publicly other people that are serving with you on council in order to execute on that. So I think what I bring to the table is that also deep knowledge of our planning process and our guiding documents with that have been drafted with a lot of community input. So I won't let developers cut corners. I've fought against bad projects in Folsom before, or projects that needed improvement. I won't say they were all bad, but projects that needed improvement. And I've made sure that we don't take down oak trees that we don't need to, that we build around them, that we make sure we have paths that connect our houses to schools and parks. that we co-locate our schools next to parks, and I always ask on any project, like, how can I walk and get a glass of wine? How can I get a gallon of milk? How does my kid get to school? If I live in this house, how do I get to all these things on foot or on bike? Because that to me is what one of the reasons I live in Folsom is the Humbug Willow Creek Trail and our really connected trails that connect our communities. That's hugely important to me, and I think it's important to most Folsom residents. So you'll see that as hey, there's a line in the sand for me, and I think the developers already know it from my time on Planning Commission, that if you're going to build in Folsom, it's a special place, and so you got to maintain Folsom standards in order to do that. I also think we're hollowing out our middle densities. State law is really trying to force us to uh, build as much high density apartments as affordable housing as we can. And it's really about zoning. So they force us to upzone for affordable housing, but then there's nothing that stops a market rate housing developer from moving in there. And then they can also put them in our commercial areas. So we're really losing a lot of the local control associated with that. And so I have the experience to really fight back. I know how the process works, and I can not only advocate at the regional level, but also the state level, and try to band together to really take back some of this local control in our zoning. Uh, and play the game better. Oh, I really want to make sure that we have housing that's affordable for new families. I want to make sure we have, courtyards and townhomes and cottage style homes. So new families can afford to live in Folsom, and then also so seniors can downsize and open up those bigger units for people that are at that phase in their life. So I think those are the big changes from the planning side. The other thing you'll see, I think, on the homeless side is enforcing our anti-camping ordinance. I think Folsom could have done better. And I will make sure, I think recently we've started to with the change in law with Grants Pass. We still, I think, can do better. And I think enforcing our laws and making sure that the police know and our code enforcement knows that our city council is behind them, and making sure that we don't have encampments in our creeks and in our parks and in our parking garage is really important to families and for me.
Got it. Thank you. Turning a little bit to your campaign now, what do you feel like, in your view, have been the biggest challenges that you faced thus far in this campaign season?
I only need about 8 more hours a day. I think I could get everything done if I only had about 8 more hours a day. And then that's it. It's always a juggle between do I fundraise? Do I go walk neighborhoods? Do I fill out questionnaires of all the different, special interest has a negative connotation to it, but there's a lot of special interests that are just special interests, right? That's what they're passionate about, and so they want to know whether you align with them. But you would be amazed at the amount of questionnaires you get from groups you never knew existed. And they just want you to fill out these 14-page, or not 14-page, but 14-question survey to see if you align with them. So if you're part of any of those nonprofits and I haven't responded, I apologize. I'm doing my best with the time that I have, and I've tried to respond to as many as I can. But that's it. I'm just trying to get out and really focus on talking to as many residents as you can. I see a lot of hyper local issues. So I think that's one of the benefits of the districting is I really am getting to in-depth walk a lot of neighborhoods and talk to people about, gosh, it'd be great if I had a crosswalk there, or it'd be great if that sidewalk extended to here, or if, Parks and Rec would just put that chain up across this open space, then these, e-motorcycles wouldn't be riding through my backyard and my open fencing. Um, so I think that's one of the cool things about going out and doing that. But yeah, the biggest challenge for sure is finding enough time to make sure I get it all in.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll just take that opportunity to thank you again for doing this podcast. For the context for our listeners, this is like evening on a weekend that we're recording this, so definitely appreciate you taking that time.
Oh, happy to do it. I love that you are. This to me is important that all the candidates, you get to know the candidates, right? Like educated voters. I'm a big believer in democracy, like I mentioned earlier, and local democracy. And the more education we can get out to voters, that to me is super important because then they can make the choice that they think is best for our city. And hey, if I'm not that person, that's okay. I'll go find something else. That's how democracy works. But I'd like to be that person, and I think I am for a lot of our voters.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm gonna switch gears just slightly. Next question I had for you. Well, you've run for city council before, and I was curious, what kind of lessons that you've learned from that experience, and how you're employing them in your current campaign right now.
Sure. I think the primary lesson is this don't run in a pandemic. So that's very helpful that we're not in a pandemic this time. And I think this, I was just talking about walking, but I really didn't walk last campaign. I did a little bit, and it was a weird time to be knocking on people's doors. And I just kind of made the decision with it, and it was probably the wrong decision at that time, but I just didn't feel comfortable approaching people's doors during that time, and so that's really what I'm the primary thing I'm doing differently is really trying to get out and talk with voters about the issues that it's important to them, and really asking them, what are your biggest issues? Like, you don't need to, you know you don't need to take a whole lot of time, but when people say, "Oh, I'm really busy," I say, "Well, just give me your top issue," right? Like, I just want to hear what your top issue is because I want to make sure that I'm addressing those with the voters and make sure that that matches with what they want to see going forward. So I think the other thing that um, is different about my campaign this time is I have a consultant on my team, and that's been good because I think before I ran in a very isolated, silo. I had my friends that were part of my committee, and we did what we thought was best. But having a consultant really brings me back to, what do the voters want? Like that's what is kind of his role has been of are you addressing what the voters are telling you need to address? Like, are you talking about those issues? And so I think that's uh, been hugely beneficial to me. And then also, like, what's different about your campaign versus your competitors? And so talking to the voters and saying, "Hey, this is how I see things, and this is how, I understand my competitor to see things," right? So really trying to differentiate the policy side of things, and so people are making what they think is the best choice for Folsom, not necessarily on personality, but on policy.
Gotcha. Thank you. Um, Again, talking a little bit about your past experience here. The context in which I first met you was with regards to the sales tax, that the initiative, I believe, is Measure G, that will be on the ballot this November. And to a large extent, I feel like you've been a leader in publicizing that sales tax campaign, especially from the beginning before it was officially on the ballot. And I noticed that a lot of what the sales tax, if it passes, would accomplish aligns well with what your platform priorities are on your website. To the extent that we're in a hypothetical situation where you are elected to the city council position and the sales tax does not pass, how would you envision there being additional barriers or challenges to accomplishing your platform? And what avenues would there still be for you to, for example, like increase city services?
Yeah, so Folsom has faced this challenge for many years. I did go to the very first meeting of community folks where they got together and talked about the idea of a sales tax, and I think at that point it was really trying to push council to push something on. It grew into the citizens initiative, but I went to that first meeting to say I'm taxed enough. I'm good on taxes. I don't need any more taxes. But then I left and I went and did my research. And I really dove deeper. I've watched the budget process the last couple cycles, but I really dove in deep to the massive reports, and then I dove into Rancho's budget and what they've done with their two measures. I dove into Elk Grove's budget and what they've done with their measure, and Roseville's budget and what they've done with their measure. And West, I started looking at the other examples in our region, right? So I did come to the conclusion that it does make sense to support Measure G. So that's probably what you saw from that second meeting. I started going out and collecting signatures and really trying to make sure this thing got on the ballot. If it doesn't pass, the council has been doing this for years, right? We have less officers now than we did in 2008, and we have 20,000 more people, right? We have fire stations that are operating without all of their recommended equipment because we don't have a crew to operate them. You can have a nice shiny piece of equipment there, but if you don't have the crew to run it 24 hours a day, you don't need it there. So we've been doing this. Our fields are our youth sports teams are having a hard time, or they're not hosting tournaments here in Folsom, and they're driving outside of Folsom to go to tournaments because other cities have fields that are kept up. And that's sad to me. I look at it and, I took the kids to the soccer seeding tournament, and it was dirt and weeds and a tiny bit of grass. Oh, and so I think the city's been doing this, the council's been doing this, and they can, if I'm on the council, I can keep doing this. It's not my ideal job. I don't love it. Because what we're going to keep doing is we're going to keep declining. We're going to keep putting things into the deferred maintenance category like we have been doing for years. That being said, I have a skill set that I've employed through Rotary, that I've learned through Rotary, that I've learned through Community Service Day, that I've learned in working with our Parks and Recreation Department. So I think at that point, we've got to stand up a Parks Foundation. And maybe we do this either way. If Measure G passes, because I do love the idea of a Parks Foundation that can take some of this load off. But my Rotary Club has gone out and built shade structures at the dog park. We've cut out boardwalks, old boardwalks, and brought our own heavy equipment, one of our members' heavy equipment, to pull those out and rebuild them. We've done actually new projects like the accessible fitness station outside of the aquatic center. So we have groups and nonprofits that can pitch in, and I have worked with these folks. I've helped organize to do these things, and we can continue to do this with private money. The downside is if Measure G passes, we have $4.5 million a year that is dedicated to Parks and Recreation, that can fix our trails, that can fix the $40 million backlog of deferred maintenance that's in the Parks Department. So we can really make a big dent. If we do this with private money, Community Service Day put just over $100,000 back in the community. Our Rotary Club puts 100 grand a year back into the community. The Friends of Folsom Libraries puts 50 grand back into the community. You start adding up all these sources, like it does add up, right? It helps our city, but what do we get to with private money that's there? $1 million? That'd be amazing. That'd be awesome to do, right? But it's really just going to Band-Aid and do the bare minimum of what we need here and our thing. And so I will do that, and I will try to get as many volunteers out pulling weeds and down grass seed, and I will happily lead that charge to say, hey, we didn't vote for a sales tax. Now I need your treasure and I need your time, right? And so I need you to get out here and fix this ball field with me. I need you to get out here and fix this bridge with me. I need you to do these things with me. So I can be that cheerleader, and I will happily do that role. But I think it is just really band-aiding it until we have that new revenue source. I hope that answers the question and makes sense. So
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Absolutely. Kind of continuing that discussion about some of the observations you made with like other cities, in the area or other cities that you've been to. As a member of the Folsom Chambers Board, I mean you've had the opportunity to visit, and learn from these other cities and how they function. I was curious an example of something, that another city's doing, or potentially, even just doing better that you would like to see implemented in Folsom.
sure, I think One of the things we've looked at over the last few years is river districts. And we have a pretty awesome potential with the Corporation Yard. There's a new property that's annexed that's south of White Rock Road to move the Corporation Yard to. And that would free up that spot that sits right along state parks and is also an easy walk from our beloved historic district. And so to me, that's a huge opportunity. Right now, I go down to the historic district and you can get, down to Lake Natoma. But if you don't know it's there, oh, you wouldn't go there. If you come visit Folsom, you wouldn't know that there's a river, really through town unless you drive over the bridge. And then you go, oh, okay, how the heck did those people get down there on paddleboards? So I, I'd love to see our historic district, really embrace having that river there and really be able to have traffic back and forth from our natural environment to our river. So we've gone to Boise, Bend, Asheville, Greenville. There's a lot of great examples out there. Austin, a lot of great examples of places that used to have their back to the river. Most more industrial towns, than Folsom. But I think Folsom also had that history, right, of the town faced away from the river. And now I think we really need to work on integrating more with the river, Lake Natoma, and even Folsom Lake. So I'd love to see uh, you look at the popularity of like Anchored Eats and Granite Bay, you look at the popularity of crawdads, right? That property sat there for so long, and as soon as it opened, it's like the doors have been blown off. Like they want to have that, nice environment and have those while they're also enjoying nature, right? It's okay to combine both of them. We want to make sure we preserve the quiet, natural spaces that is most of Lake Natoma, right? I think those are amazing. I love kayaking and paddleboarding out there and having that no development, plenty of places to go and have that respite from the urban or respite from the urban feel. But I also think having some commercial along the river is okay, especially when set back a little bit from state parks, but really being able to be able to bike in and bike out, walk in and walk out, kayak in and kayak out, or paddleboard and paddleboard out. So that's something that I've seen other cities do better, and I think Folsom has a lot of potential there, and something I definitely plan on working on if I'm elected.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah, I personally have seen the examples of that as well. And there's a city in Washington, in southern Washington, that really leaned into the river district in their city, and it had extremely positive impacts on that.
One of the things that you've talked about throughout this interview has been community service day. And to the extent that you've had a lot of different experiences with it, it seems like you've been pretty involved for a long time now. To what extent do you view community service day being able to evolve and expand in the future, particularly if you are elected to the city council?
So I think, like I said, community service day, it's amazing. All right. I was involved from the outset. I was lucky enough to get an invitation. I was part of the Young Professionals program, which is how I got the original invitation. And it was a room full of people that were just invited to be in this room and say, "Hey, what do you guys think? Should we do this thing?" And we all hopped in, and some of us are still there 11 years later. So I do love what we've managed to create. And what we always talk about is that the projects are important, right? Getting everybody out, putting 100 and I don't know, $12,000 back in the community, I think is what we did this year. Putting that $112,000 back in the community, hugely important. Uh, Projects that get done at our nonprofits, on our public spaces, and with our Neighbors Helping Seniors program, hugely important. But what's even more important is creating that culture of volunteerism, that Folsom is a place where we give back. And the other 364 days a year, we're hopefully making connections among those people. We're hopefully getting young people involved in service through Community Service Day. and then inspiring them to give back to Folsom and be involved the other 364 days a year with trails, with the unhoused, with the library, with, it doesn't matter what avenue that we inspire them, whatever their passion is we want to kind of connect them with other people that want to give back to Folsom. So that to me is what Community Service Day is there for. And I think a lot of I I don't want to speak for the committee, but we talk about this, right? Is like, that's really the reason we still get together in the morning, because we could just send people to their projects, right? We don't have to do the same color shirt every year, right? We could do all this without pulling everybody together, and getting that big group picture and all having our same color shirts. But what I love is now I see those shirts when I'm at Rayleigh's, right? I see those shirts when I'm out walking the trails, and I say, "Hey, what project did you work on last year? Hey, what?" And so we start talking and communicating and making connections over our shared desire to give back to Folsom. So I think we take that and we make it easier to volunteer for our city. Uh, it's easier to volunteer for a lot of our nonprofits than it is for our city. And I think we need to break down some of those barriers. We need to have an easy system where we use citizens to help identify needs. And then we use citizens to help solve those needs. And we can, you know, funding is always open for discussion of how we do those things. I think there's a lot of different ways that we do that. But making sure we're creating those project leaders that can identify a project, that can carry it through, and that can motivate and inspire others to help them accomplish it. And then they can look back on. I think about this. The other day, I walked out of the back of the community center. We were doing our public safety awards lunch. And I was a bit player, going to help out and a little bit at the beginning with setting things up. But I walked out the back door at the end after we were cleaning up, and um, I saw the wall that was behind there, that the dumpsters covers up the dumpsters, and we painted that as a mural for our very first community service day. The only one that rained on us. Oh, and we figured that was when community service is the only day it was in October. Only year it was in October. We moved to September after that. But I looked at that and I go, that was 11 years ago. Almost, I guess is this 11 or yeah, I think it was 11 years ago. And it's still there, still brings a smile to my face. And I think how many smiles has that brought over 11 years? And I feel like I have like a little ownership of that wall. Like if there was graffiti on that wall, I'd go clean it up, right? And so that's what we're trying to create, is that ownership and that sense of, this is my town and I give back, and then I want to take care of it going forward.
Awesome. Well, Justin, really appreciate everything so far. I just wanted to know if there's anything else that, we didn't cover in our questions that wanted our listeners to know about you or your campaign in general.
So I think I've talked about it a lot, but I think my goal is really, to bring us together as a community. I think Folsom is a special place, and I think there's a fear out there, especially with the growth, that we are losing that small town feel. We're losing that community feel. And so I think I just want to, continue that as a priority, right? So my priorities with planning and my priorities on council are aligned with that. But it's really and really my giving back and community service priorities are aligned with that. But there's also like community gathering spaces, like making sure we have these public spaces where we get together, and that we can have events, that we can bond over, and we can meet each other. Having these connected trails, right, that's the priority to me. So I think if gotta take away any one thing about this is that's why I'm in it. Is Folsom, when I very first moved to the area, the community showed up to support my small business, and it wasn't somewhat about the business, but it was also about the community, right? People came in and said, "Hey, I'm here to help," and I went, "Wait, what? You're here to help? I'm setting up someplace to sell you some services, and you're coming in to tell me that you're here to help me because I'm a small business owner. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's the Folsom that I know. That's the Folsom I love. I go everywhere and I run into people I know. Then I run into people that are give back to Folsom. So I think the community spirit is alive and well, even though we have some threats of growth and we have some delayed infrastructure and we have some financial challenges. All those things we have, right? But it doesn't mean that we have to lose what's special about Folsom, and that's community. So I'll do my best to work to bring us all together and be cordial and professional with each other and be able to have disagreements and argue it out in public and try to make the best decisions that we can as a community together to make sure that Folsom maintains that feel.
Well, thank you so much today for your time, and we appreciate you answering all our questions. We'll be sure to post your website in our comments down below so people can learn more about you if we didn't cover everything in the interview. But thank you to all the listeners as well. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.